My name is Carson Seelman, and this is On Air with Heritage Action, a podcast built for conservatives. Twice a week, we break down some of the most important issues facing our country and talk about how you can get involved today in the fight for conservative values. This week, President Biden made a huge announcement that he would be again extending the student loan payment pause and forgiving $10,000 in federal student loan debt for most borrowers. The plan increases that debt cancellation to $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients. What this means is that under this plan, the debt from about 20 million people would be transferred to the rest of us. So congrats, President Biden is increasing your student loan debt. That's because there is no such thing as debt cancellation. There is only debt transference. For millions of students, loans were taken and tuition money was spent. There is no question about any of that. The only question was, who is going to pay that money back? And for decades, the answer was the student. That made sense. They are the ones benefiting from their degree, and they are the ones who chose to take out the loan. But now, because of Biden, the answer is now the U.S. taxpayer. And among that class of people who we call the U.S. taxpayer are millions of individuals who never even went to college. They are blue-collar workers who often make less than the individuals who took out loans and went to college. There are millions more who were responsible and already paid off their debts. And there are millions who lived frugally and worked a job while going to community college so that they could avoid debt. All of these people, these U.S. taxpayers, are now paying for someone else's debt. And this is not a small group of people who are being wronged. Here's the stat the left doesn't want you to hear. And remember this number, 87%. 87% of Americans either worked hard to responsibly pay off their loans, or they never even had loans to begin with. So now these American taxpayers will be responsible for subsidizing the college education of the other 13%. For those of you at home who didn't have any student loans, guess what? You do now. We all know that this plan is fundamentally unfair, but it is especially unfair when you look at who is actually going to benefit from this policy. According to the Heritage Foundation's research, more than half of student loan debt is held by households whose borrowers earned graduate degrees. For reference, professional degree holders like doctors and lawyers, for example, earn a median annual income of over $90,000. That's another stat Joe Biden probably didn't want you to know. Those with expensive student loans should be responsible for paying for their own education. And if they earn these expensive graduate degrees and don't land a job that is lucrative enough to pay back their loans, maybe the colleges and universities should be on the hook instead of fellow American taxpayers. And that's who's really benefiting from this, the broken system of universities, the education industrial complex. And before I go into this, I'm not saying all college is bad. I'm not saying people who went to college are bad. What I'm saying is that the system is broken, incentives are misaligned, and it's doing real harm to America. In America, woke universities have been getting rich off of working people. For decades, the education industrial complex has been jacking up tuition at rates far higher than inflation and pressuring students into taking on more and more debt to pay for it. Universities have been pocketing that money and have grown enormous endowments, billions upon billions of dollars, to the point where some elite universities are more like hedge funds than colleges. You could make the argument that their primary business is investing in the stock market, not educating students. Look at these numbers from 2018. This is how large the endowments are for some elite institutions. Harvard, $33 billion. Yale, $23 billion. Stanford, $20 billion. Princeton, $20 billion. MIT, $12 billion. That's massive, and they're doing it all tax-free because universities are supposed to be a social good. But with how woke and anti-American many of these universities have become, you could argue that's no longer the case. If these institutions are trying to tear down America, are they really doing a social good? But back to student loans. Student loan forgiveness is a huge handout to these ultra-wealthy institutions. Canceling the debt today encourages universities to keep hiking tuition and to pressure future students to take on even more debt. Biden's actions don't fix student debt. He's making the problem worse for the next generation. An analogous situation is how Biden is pushing for amnesty for illegal immigration. Amnesty doesn't solve illegal immigration, it makes it worse. Amnesty is the wrong incentive. Amnesty encourages more immigrants to illegally cross our southern border. Amnesty increases the amount of illegal immigration in the future. Likewise, debt cancellation is the wrong incentive. It increases the amount of student debt in the future. So now that we have covered how Biden is making the college system worse in the long term, let's talk about how he's making life worse in the short term. Biden's debt cancellation will have a major inflationary effect on our economy. Starting with the pause on student loan payments, the U.S. government has lost a lot of revenue from delayed debt repayments. According to the Heritage Foundation's research from May of this year, the Department of Education has already lost over $200 billion in repayments and another $5 billion in accrued interest. And just as we know, this is not just monopoly money. According to Heritage Research, the pause in student loan repayments alone has already cost us taxpayers $130 billion. And that's just the pause on payments that has done this. Biden is doubling down on this previous policy and adding debt forgiveness to the mix. It's about to get a lot worse. Expect more inflation from all this money being essentially pumped into consumers' pockets. Aside from the negative impacts on higher education and the inflationary consequences, we also can't just gloss over the fact that this announcement is yet another major bureaucratic overreach from the Biden administration. Speaker Nancy Pelosi herself even admitted that President Biden does not have the authority to unilaterally cancel any student loans. That power belongs to Congress. But Biden is not solely to blame for this. For decades, Congress has gladly allowed the executive and judicial branches to legislate law and shrink the role of Congress. Congressmen want a perfect record to run on, and so they love avoiding hard votes. Better to let one of the other branches do the dirty work of running a government. And so now Biden is legislating from the executive branch. That's simply not how our founding fathers expected our government to work, and it's certainly not what they wrote in the Constitution. This is a sad week for sane and functional government. The good news is that millions of Americans see through Biden's transparent attempt to buy votes and reverse his rapidly declining approval rates ahead of the midterm elections. Come November, we will all have an opportunity to reject this agenda and replace the congressional leadership that has contributed to the past 18 months of crippling inflation, handouts to the wealthy, and broken promises. That's it for another episode of On Air with Heritage Action. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard in today's episode, please click the follow button. If you want to receive a text message each time a new episode airs, text podcast to 51776 and you'll never miss an episode. That's podcast to 51776. Hi, it's me again, and we need your help. If you like the insights and activist resources we are providing, please take 1 minute and help us spread the word. Share this episode with friends and family on social media, email, or text. We need everyone's help in the fight to hold Washington accountable. And don't forget, you are also able to subscribe and listen to episodes on your smartphone. Just open up your favorite podcast app and search for On Air with Heritage Action. Click subscribe and download episodes so that you can take them with you on the go. It's the best way to make sure you never miss a thing. Thanks.